So I'm curious your take then on carrying tasks forward that don't get done. So for instance, if you put a to-do on your calendar and it's an important block of time that you're supposed to work on something and you skip it, something else comes up, you're on the phone, you just can't do it. Do you then drag that thing forward to a later time in the week? And same with a task list. If you don't get your outcomes for today done, how do you carry those forward?
Yeah, I mean, none of us are perfect. Even those of us who study and teach productivity still have things that we don't get to, and we have to either defer or push it to a future date. One of the nice advantages of using a calendar-based system, or even those who may be more comfortable with a notebook or a paper-based system, is the idea of physically moving something to a particular date in the future. I think one of the traps that many people fall into if they're using a to-do list manager or perhaps some other project management tool is that many of these pieces of software make it so easy for us to bulk defer, right? It's so easy to take like 5 things and just, push that to next Monday, or push all 5 of these to tomorrow, even though you haven't really looked or analyzed any of those items individually, right? You're just sort of dumping them all sometime in the future. So I think taking a little bit of effort up front, saying like, okay, wait a minute, I'm not going to have time to do this today. Do I need to do this tomorrow, or can I push this even further in advance? Or maybe of the 3 things that I'm not going to get to today, what absolutely should be done tomorrow? What else could be deferred to maybe later on in the future? I think far too often people get to Monday morning and they've got a huge list of things, many of which have just been deferred from the previous week by default. So I think putting a little bit of extra thought, actually going through each line item. The other trick or tip that I have is that when you are deferring something, especially if you found yourself deferring the same task multiple times or multiple days, is to actually go back and rewrite that task, reword it in a different format. Because if you're just moving the same thing, it might be the way that you're actually looking at that task. Do you need a verb or an action tense at the beginning of that? Were you not as specific as you should have been when you first wrote that task? So if you find yourself deferring the same thing more than 2 days, force yourself to maybe rewrite it, in a different format. That might be a lot more effective than you think.
Such a great tip. Or maybe it needs to be divided up into something that's actually achievable instead of such a big task. I see a lot of people putting these gargantuan things on their to-do list that you couldn't possibly make any progress with because it's so daunting. We have a rule. My assistant follows defer, 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 delete. Like if I've deferred something 3 times, she quizzes, like really presses me on it. Do you even need to do this thing? Are you ever going to do this thing? And it's a good wake up call. So I think that's always an option too, is if you're deferring, maybe you don't need to do it.
Absolutely. I love that. That's almost like 3 strikes and you're out, right? If you've done it 3 times, wait a minute, is this really valuable to you? Or, another important D word is delegate. Does it need to be delegated to someone else if you have that option? But I also am very glad that you brought up this concept of length of time or the duration of any given task. My general rule of thumb is if it's going to take me more than 2 hours to complete something, you need to break that up because you're probably dealing with a project. Even if it's a small project, if you can't complete that task in less than 2 hours, you should try and break that up into smaller chunks.